Welcome back. This is WB Wake Up Lease Morning Vibes. Tuesday morning, the 16th of June 2026. Most High hosting. We've got traffic in the house, and the traffic from deep south. And we've been hearing about a lot of the tension and conflicts that have been going on in Toledo as it relates to land. And for the very first time, I believe, on the WUB, we have the private landowners here to present their side, their challenges. And so we have in studio with us Ms. Martine King, representing the Toledo private and lease landowners of Toledo. And so we've got to say good morning. We're supposed to have as well via Zoom or via phone. We hope we can make the Zoom connect with Mrs. Zell Alamia. She is, of course, a former minister of government, and she's from Toledo too. In Toledo, private landowners in the house. We have not had you on before, primarily because you guys have not exactly been seeking to engage publicly on this matter. No. I guess I will give you the opportunity to kind of lay out where you are and what the primary concerns and challenges are from the perspective of the organization that you are part of.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. And Toledo Private and Lease Landowners, TPLL, because it is a long name, we formalized last year, but there have been individuals, groups, families, and entire villages standing up for their rights since the CCJ consent order in 2015. We are a group of people who last year formalized, and I think one of the pressing matters was when we saw the draft bill that's being proposed right now, and the word that it uses for private landowners and lease landowners is an extinguishment of our rights. That's what it says. And so you can imagine we were already worried, we were already scared about our constitutional rights to our lands. Not that we believe that the Mayans and the customary lands and the systems that they have, they needed protection, and so we're not arguing that. We are here saying, but our rights matter as well. And so we formalized, we saw this bill, we retained the legal services of Courtney Koyi, and we did a legal review of the bill because we wanted to understand if what we saw in that bill was exactly what it meant, which was extinguishing our rights, and they agreed. That was one, right? So addressing the bill before it becomes law. The other one was the tensions on the ground. So for example, nothing has been put in law yet in terms of how the government is going to implement the framework from the 2015 consent order. But yet there are roads that cannot be accessed, public roads, folks who cannot get into their lands. Well, you can see some of the examples lately. We had San Marcos and some other areas. This has been happening for years, right? Where lease and private landowners haven't been able to even access their property. So those are some of the, we call it a level of lawlessness that's been happening on the ground. Another example is that we haven't been able to pay our taxes. And this was first under the UDP admin and now under this admin. Minister Zabane has put some stuff in place now where certain communities are able to pay their taxes, but most of us still can't. And so these are just some of the realities on the ground that we've been dealing with. And I guess the other part is there's what you have, and I wrote it down to get this right, the Joint Review Panel, which had 2 members of the government and 2 members, I think it representatives from MLA and TAA, at the table discussing how this bill or the framework would work. And we have been fighting for a seat at that table because everything that happens affects us, right? So the cabinet has approved our seat at that a couple weeks ago, and we're happy for that. And we're waiting now to be at the next meeting.
Now help me out. Describe to me as best you can what the organization represents insofar as the number of members and a sense of what amount of land do they represent in Toledo.
Okay, so we have that we know of, because we have people outside of Belize, maybe 150 people right now, and that includes Mayas and non-Mayas. We have Belizeans living here, Belizeans living abroad. I mean, we have people contributing $20 to our cause, because all of this has been paid for via donations. I don't have as yet an exact acreage. It's difficult to get that. But when it comes to membership right now, we have about 150 and growing. Yeah.
And we're not talking here about, like, you would say, just your traditional, house and lot situation. What is the? Give me a sketch of what we're looking at. We're looking at farms. We're looking at commercial land situations.
All of it.
So
we have big landowners. We have folks who have just their home. I mean, I have someone on our board is from Emery Grove, and he has his home and his farm there. We have, like I tell you, villagers in different villages who just, may not yet even have titles. Some do, who want their private lands. We have farmers. We have, it's really a broad spectrum of people.
And just to kind of get a better profile, you would say you have, what's the general range of ownership span? Are we looking at more people who have owned these properties for decades? We're looking at people who have owned, who just recently got a title?
So no. I mean, most of the people in our group are before 2015, because as you know, the consent order says after 2015, nothing should have been, certainly no new stuff, leases or sales. Most, if not all of us, are from before that. I mean, most of us are people who for decades have had lands. Not everyone, of course, but a lot of us.
Is there a significant, small or no component that represents foreign land ownership interests? Are there foreigners who are?
Yes, we have someone on our. Yeah, but I don't know if they're the majority of us. We have some churches. We have definitely a few non-Belizeans who are a part of this group, but they are not the majority of the group. Because the truth is, when you think about this will mostly affect, that's my home. And if I wanted to be able to leave something for my children, and I don't know, my brain goes to this all the time. If I have people buried there, and this new bill talks about extinguishment and compensation, if you give a compensation to someone, how can they really use that money now to completely uproot and go buy and reestablish where? So for most of us, we live there, or this is our homes, and this is what we would have used for banking, for our children, for our farming, things like that, right?
So I was just about to say, how are the commercial banks dealing with this? What component? I would assume, but it's not good to assume. Are there people who have mortgages on these properties with the commercial banks? Are the commercial banks have they had any presence, any defending their interests? What extent? What is their policy? What are they looking at?
As of now, nothing has changed in terms of what was already established. So if you already have that. Going in now, that might change if you want to use, because it's not resolved, because nothing is really clear. We're as close as this. I mean, we know the customary lands exist. The consent order says that the government then has to create the framework, right? But so far it's business as usual, but that will change shortly because it's volatile, right?
Volatile on the ground. And I'm doing these kind of questions because unfortunately, this is a national gargantuan issue. This is like up there, but unfortunately, if it's happening in Toledo, it's as if though it's not happening.
Yeah.
And so we're glad that you asked to come, so we can kind of get a better sense of what it feels like.
That's a part of what we want to do.
So we're trying. I'm trying to just ask these questions to kind of probe. You are saying here that on the ground, how how do you grade the temperature on a daily basis, or is it just sporadic incidents? Is it you have some very specific ones that are kind of festering and kind of explosive? What are we looking at overall when we think about the members of your organization and what they're experiencing?
Well, I'd say it's hot, and yes, there are some areas like you've been hearing about San Marcos and Indian Creek and those places which are definitely hotter than the rest and volatile and active right now. But generally speaking, there is just a real sense of unease and distrust. And there are a lot of tension. So again, like Big Falls, they don't want to be included in the communal land at all. So for them, there's a lot of tension there in the fact that they're even mentioned as a Mayan Indian village. You have Emery Grove, where, you know, half of their village is being claimed by, they're an East Indian Creole village, and half of their village is being claimed. Buildings have even been built in their area. So they have actually been one of the groups, the villages, very active in standing up for themselves for years. And that's ongoing, affecting their daily lives, right?
Have the NGOs been involved with your group? Are the issues with NGO, I mean, Yashe, I think?
Yes, yes.
What is the situation with that?
So they are not, well, they are fighting on their own in terms of protecting what they protect, their lands. And I know that they have been working with the government to do just that, right? To protect the lands, which they've been doing. And they own that privately, right? It is a not-for-profit, it's a protected area, but they own it. And so they've been having a lot of issues with villagers. And again, this is not entire villages, you know. Some villagers understand, are trying to understand, but they're just groups who are just going about as if they own the entire district. And I think that is where you see a lot of the tensions coming up.
Okay, again, from your group's perspective, Ms. King, was this the temperature on the ground, the disputes, the realities that you are representing and you're putting the light on via this conversation, were these inevitable, or do you feel like certain things have not worked? Do you feel like entities have failed? Do you feel like they are villains? Do you feel like there's been incompetence? And if so, if you feel like we do have villains or we do have people that have completely dropped the ball, what agencies, what people have failed for it to have reached this point?
Yeah, so we're 10, 11 years since the ruling, right? And I think from then, the government has really not done what it's supposed to do in being able to actively, and I understand it's very hard, but they have not done what they're supposed to do and have just, in my view, delayed and delayed. I mean, and I have here an outline of just from 2015 to where we are now. So, I mean, you started with the consent order, then you had a statement of commitment. This is over 10 years.
The government's been dilly-dallying.
Yeah. A lot has been kicked down the road, and it is a very difficult issue. So I'm not saying that it's something that needed to have been rushed into at all. But at the same time, I think, and especially where we are now, the heat that you see now is that it's built up to this. Then it's like where the uncertainty has gotten to a point where if I can't access my land, or I don't know, the communities don't know really what it means to have communal lands. That yes, so I think the governments have had a big role to play in this.
Have you guys been guilty of being spectators, or have you been just you've been ignored or not being engaged?
Private landowners?
Yes. Or it has been a combination of both? It's
a combination of both, because like I said, there are folks, private and lease landowners, who have been standing up for themselves for years. I, for example, never felt that our constitutional rights would have been, to use their word, extinguished. I figured that we were going to figure out a way where communal lands were respected and they were given what the CCJ says, but we would also be protected. Well, I was very wrong. So for me, I'm a latecomer to this game in that sense. I was worried, but I felt that it would be dealt with in a way that we would all be okay. But I don't want that to be confused with the folks who have been from day one meeting with government, getting lawyers, going to the police, trying to pay their land taxes, all those things that have been happening for years. But yes, in that sense, I think that as private and lease landowner, and if Liselle was here, she would say, I tell her no long time, right? Because when she was in office, she was trying to get all the parties on board. And I think maybe we were not as receptive at the time.
No. At present, is there any engagement at all? Any dialogue at all between your group and the MLA? Is there any conversation going on at all, or is it you all are focused on engaging the government on this matter?
With the government, that's what we have been doing.
Okay.
Because they are the party responsible really to create this frame, and we have wanted we wanted to understand the bill. We got audiences from Minister Zabane with Senior Counsel Marshall-elect to get an understanding of what it meant for us. And then we want a seat at the table. And so we have been dealing with government as the entity in charge really of setting this up and creating this and including all of us.
Okay. And looking at this situation, we know that the Mayans have indicated that they'll be going back to court. So I want to get in the matter of the court, but I need to take a break because I'm a bit behind time. Back to the WUB Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes. Moside hosting on this Tuesday morning and engaging in a very important conversation, a very important opportunity for me, on behalf of those who listen and watch the show. You know that over the years I've been involved in these conversations. We've had our Mayan brothers and sisters here before the CCJ's ruling. They've been coming to the show. We've been very engaged and more than engaged, we've been very supportive of their quest to deal with defending their rights and also dealing with the historical wrongs that they have experienced through the whole process of conquest, colonization, and all that. And we completely understand that when we start to move towards, as groups, and I'm saying this to Ms. King during the break because she was asking me if there was something that what's my view, where do I land on this, and do I feel like they're wrong? And I said to her, this is a very sensitive issue. I feel that because it's happening to Toledo, it's not being adequately covered, not being properly and thoroughly kept on top of. And it's a issue that has potential for great problems that we don't want to see visit our shores. The word you use to describe the temperature, it's hot. If you speak, you understand. They have been unable to find a landing for a ruling that took place in 2015. And in my view, the CCJ tried to serve two masters in its ruling. It wanted to do right by history, but it didn't want to create too much of have any problems with political power and political government. And so it left a lot for the government to do, when a lot of what led to the Mayans being forced to take up the quest for communal land ownership and their rights was because of the failure of governments over a period of time. So that was that's strange to me, problematic. And again, I don't feel I would be hypocritical if I were to say, oh, if I was somebody that had a home in Toledo. I'd lived there, my parents had lived there, this is our property, and whatever financial stability comes with land ownership and your property, that I would want one day to wake up and a government to say to me, you need to move from where you are, you need to get up and leave. Mm-hmm. This is how it's going to work. That is not easy stuff, but we are left to try to work our way to landing on our feet on this issue and not completely falling on our faces. I would say the question that I would have for you guys is I often task the representative, I've had these conversations with Ms. Christina when they were pursuing these results in the court, said, to what extent are you dialoguing with other groups, Garifuna associations? I didn't mention private landowners. To some extent, if I'm to be perfectly honest, whenever I thought about private landowners, I just thought about these big estate owners and felt, I don't really dare to defend them. Mm-hmm. But always felt that because of our fault lines that we have, and Toledo has some serious fault lines running across it, that there needed to be engagement, consistent dialogue. Do you feel, again, even moving towards 2015, were you guys just asleep, like not realizing that there is a movement of people here?
I would say so. I mean, speaking for myself, for sure. And I think a lot of us were, most of us were in this group, but not everyone as always, but I would say generally speaking, yes. I think there were obviously huge emotional reactions, but I don't think any of that turned into fruitful discussions or anything immediately after. But there's just a sense of fear. Right? And even now, I mean, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, well, you're right. You know, there is space for more discussion and touching base and doing that, right? Although when the temperature is already hot and everybody feels threatened, it's a lot more difficult to navigate conversations like that. But to answer your original question, yeah, I think there was that sort of lackadaisical kind of, this not figure out itself.
No, you opened up this conversation by saying you don't have a problem with the communal land ownership, customary land ownership, the rights that the Mayan people have secured with that ruling, that is not, you are not ideologically opposed to that. You don't, that's not your quarrel. Mm-hmm. It's not your quarrel. But it's very likely that that's just an individual position. Mm-hmm. I would put to you, I'm sure that there are members of the group who don't have that kind of feeling towards it, mm-hmm. that hate the idea of it. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't you say that exists?
Yeah, definitely.
And do you have members who were maybe unlike yourself, who was kind of just living your life and doing your thing? Do you have members who were maybe more active than that, who were like on the ground fighting it from day one?
Yes, we do. And again, I mean, I think Big Falls, I think Emery Grove, I mean, and again, there's a vision within the villages themselves, right? Those who want communal land and those who don't, those who want to have their titles. And so, yeah, we have a cross-section of that. And I keep saying this organization was formalized last year. Mm-hmm. They have been folks on the ground fighting this from the get-go. I wish there had been more of us, that is for sure, because I think then we would have had space for some of those dialogues, or maybe to have maybe not gotten to this heat, but here we are now, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that there's just a sense of threat of what's going to happen and a lack of clarity, and I'll say it again to an extent, a lack of law and order.
When you say a lack of law and order, speak to me, expand on that. What do you mean?
So just for example, if a government road, access to someone's land is being blocked, and you go and you report that to the police, it's see a change now with what Minister Zabane is doing. For a while, though, the police have not wanted to touch anything that has to do with this. They either wouldn't come, or you could lodge your complaint, and then it would be left there. And this is not just private landowners and lease landowners. This is amongst villagers as well, right? Or you're not allowed to build certain things on your land, or even the demarcation where, you know, farmers would be on their land and all of a sudden they just run into a group of people on their land measuring their land. And they're, you know, that right now is still our land, and so the law really trumps all of that. But there's a sense that when you make these reports or when there are confrontations and you go to the police, they haven't I don't think they knew what to do about it, rather, is what I should say.
Is it the legal opinion, if it is something that they have spoken on, that it's hard to know exactly what judges mean unless they actually say it. But still, this is what we're left with. That the CCJ saw this as being the ultimate impact, that yes, this is what is going to happen, that your rights are going to be extinguished. You had a land, you had your title, but that no longer applies, no longer exists. And if if that is an ambiguous thing to find out what the CCJ would have wanted to be done in your instances, then when it comes to our rights, the courts are there. That's where we go for the protection of our rights. Why would you not then pursue this legally and force the CCJ to have a definitive position on how your rights will be accounted for?
Well, we have wanted to go following the process, right? So we made contact with the government. They are the folks who have the task of, as the court, I have the first 4 points here from the consent order, that they are responsible for doing that. So we have had contact with them. And so we really wanted to go through the steps to see where we want to be included. We want our rights to be this bill, and that's our thing, this bill. And I'll be honest, the MLA and the TAA, they are not in agreement with the draft bill either, and we are
Nobody likes the bill.
Nobody like it. And so our thing has been, look, this cannot happen. We need to be at the table. They've now said, okay, you can be at the table. So let's do that. Let's have this inclusion. Let's look at something, some mosaic, something that works where our rights are respected. But go back to your question, if we need to go to court, we're going to court. That's just there. I mean, we would rather not. One, it's very expensive, it's very time consuming, and in all of this, people are living in Toledo and developments are being stopped, and when I say development, I mean of all scales. Little, because the truth is, you know how development is down south. People living their lives, people investing in their property, life is being halted because of this, right? And so, but we'll go to court if we have to go to court. That we knew that from the get-go.
No, yeah, again, I don't know what the CCJ, and maybe I am being unfair to the CCJ, but the defendants in the matter was the government. And then, so the government had a view. The government defended its power to be the one responsible for the distribution of land. And the government preferred the way we determined land ownership, individual ownership, private ownership. Government was not of the view that we could have two different systems. The government lost, but they were still left largely responsible for converting the ruling of the CCJ into what would take place on the ground.
To
my mind, I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I can't read minds. It just seems like unpinned grenade was thrown here.
Yeah. So you're giving it back to them to figure it out
Without
when
the
in
pin.
the first place.
Without the pin.
Yeah.
And so it's an extremely explosive situation. And surprise to no one, well, surprise to me, that the political directorate has failed.
Yeah.
Now, I understand why you would not want to go so far, but if you have to say you have failed, now it could be that you were unavoidably failed because this was just mission impossible from day one. But you could not have wanted a situation now where the temperature is reached where it has reached. Where now we have reports of, we had this recent incident of the alcalde being, that he was kidnapping. You have the police department doesn't know what to do in these situations. This is wild.
No, and I think it's both. I think it's a very difficult issue, and at the same time, I do think up until recently, when they've been more active, even as getting as far as the bill that none of us want, nobody wants, but nonetheless, it was an attempt to do that. And even now, I see where they're working. The ministry is working with the police, so that they're stepping in more. But again, we need way more of that. We need this presence on the ground while we continue to figure this out. Because as you're saying, it was put in the government's hands. We don't know exactly what they were thinking. We can certainly venture some guess, but it has led to where we are now, where things are volatile and it's dangerous, and you know, we're peaceful, and it's not that. Sometimes you need the fight. I'm not saying that, right? But we don't want it at the cost of lives. It's not that we don't think that there would be conflicts or disagreements in figuring this out. But now we're at a point where lives are being threatened, kidnapping, things are being burnt down. There's just a general sense of great unease and a sense of threat.
How problematic, and how do you deal with the fact that you do have the ethnic component? That I would imagine that primarily the association that you are part of is non-Maya.
We have, like I was saying, we do have those villages, but primarily, yeah, I would say so.
And how do you safeguard against, because human nature rough, Ms. King, and we have our prejudices, and sometimes we have our demons, and they are not kind. How do you safeguard your struggle from deteriorating into that?
Well, I think as certainly the leaders, the group that we were voted and we are the ones leading this group right now, there's really just no tolerance for that, because we are not going to make this about Maya people per se, or personalities or cultures. We don't like this bill. We don't like what it's doing to either of us. And that's where we keep coming back to that focus.
Hello, you're on the show.
Hi, pleasant good morning, Mr. Mose and Ms. King.
Morning.
Morning, sir.
Ms. King, I'm hearing that you're saying that there's some actions whereby I think we got to be careful when we said the alcalde was kidnapped, because there isn't any proof to that situation. And I'm surprised that some of us are saying the kidnapping took place. Also, I would like to say that the situation is that, Mr. Mose, I believe you have been a long one, quite informative about this information. And I've also want to bring up to you that when the MLA or the Julian Society started, these were foreign money that came into the country, I believe, years ago. They found a group of people who was willing to back their agenda. Now the horse is out the gate. The communal land has to occur. And all we're saying that 90% of the Toledo private and landowners don't have any problem with communal land. The problem is that both parties have rights. Under the Constitution, we have to remember that the supreme law of Belize is the Constitution, and we need to follow the Constitution. And all we're saying is that whoever has a private or lease land, we would like it to stay that way. Whatever is currently under communal land status, let it be that way. And that is how all of us in Toledo feel about the situation. And I will leave that with you guys today.
let me ask this on that note. We know that in our country we have been plagued by land speculators. Land speculation has been a problem here. So if you have someone who has been developing a property, who has lived there, they have their home, they have their farm, don't you believe that there is a difference between that and someone who has used the political game to just, they don't even live at Toledo. They didn't even have an interest in living in Toledo. It was just, I got to connect and I could go and just get 200-300 acres down in Toledo. I don't have interest to even plant one lime tree. I just sit down on that.
I'm fully aware of that, because even us in communities like Emery Grove, Dump, Muffordai, we don't want anybody from our district to come and get our land anyway. So what we're saying is for the government to put a structure to define the village boundaries properly. Once each village knows where the village boundary is, then the chairman or the alcalde, the government will have to work in terms of getting approval from these people if anybody is to get any land in their communities. And if we were to look and to see within the last 10 or 15 years, there hasn't been where most of these communal land is that private landowners are getting these lands. I would want to say that I am to take you to Gram Creek, Machakilha, and some of these other places. Are they Belizean who are getting these lands that just came here 10 years ago, owning huge tract of land? We might be worrying about Belizean piece of land, but we're not worrying about Guatemalan that possess a threat to our country coming over and making recent new villages within the last 10, 15 years. Who are these people? They're getting the land, are they paying land tax? Do they sell their corn, their beans, their cattle to Belize? Or everything is sold right next door over? Do they use the Belize telephone system? So I believe something like this moves as being a Creole descendant. You need to properly come down and to look on the ground and to get a better understanding to represent your people and all of us in Belize properly. I will leave that with you, Mose.
Again, with due respect, sir, I don't like your last comment. My responsibility is to be Belizean and to want what is best for Belize. I know who I am. I know where I'm from. I absolutely know that with great clarity. My responsibility, I would agree with you, is to be very acquainted with the facts on the ground, and I am definitely not somebody who has not, I'm not I'm not from Toledo, but you can't call me a stranger to Toledo. And I've had conversations with, I was just telling Ms. King, I believe during the break, that I have been chastised on multiple occasions in Toledo by people who didn't agree with my support, and I have listened to all they've had to say. And so my position of support is not based on ignorance. It's not based on not being available for full conversations. So I don't like the comment. I don't. I think it's the kind of comment that builds up the energy of
division.
I don't like it. But I understand the temperature is high. I'm not about to get.
And those are the nuances what he's talking about, because you do have where you have. Oh, are we?
Sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Oh.
I see.
Oh, hi.
Used to come on the show a lot back in the days, you know, but I would do it for a long time. But
you know, invite me.
Huh?
It goes both ways, you know. The phone rings both ways.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Unfortunately, you're coming to the end of this conversation, but we will have to. This is not a conversation that can be a one-timer.
Yeah.
And I feel that it's important. I think it's unfortunate that we had a technical problem with you this morning. So we will have to have a part B to this, for sure. And not like 1 year from now. We'll have to be scheduled within a month. Talk to me before we have to go to a break.
Well, I think following on what that caller just said, really, I think what we're trying to communicate is that there are, I think, having come to Toledo is also understanding how we all have coexisted as a multi-ethnic district. Yes, my customary land tenure does exist in the Toledo district, and I think Martine has said it. We are not here to quarrel whether that exists or not. That is a fact. And the court acknowledges that exists, right? What matters is how do we then protect the interests of all the other people that call Toledo home? And I agree with you. There are people who are only speculating. And we're not here to talk about those people that are speculating, right? Because that is bigger than us. That is looking at national land policy. Right? There should be a national land policy that governs all of Belize, because this isn't happening only in Toledo. The fact that we're losing access to our land, because, you know, once land gets into foreign ownership, it's hard for us to even recover that land because we just can't afford it. And so that is a challenge for us, but that is a land policy matter and a matter that government needs to deal with across this country. What we are dealing with is more in regards to the implementation of the consent order and the direction that government is presently taking as outlined in the Maya Customary Land Tenure Bill, that is looking to extinguish all the rights of, a huge extinguishment of rights of people that hold title and leases. And that, for example, I always use my husband as an example. He is a Belizean. He has lived no other part of this country except for the time he lived in Belize City. He has zero interest in living in any other part. What do you do with individuals like him that have only known Toledo as home, right? A Creole man, how do you coexist with that? Also, what people don't understand within the Maya Customary Land Tenure as it presently exists, and you can blame that on the westernization and the introduction of the Western system into Toledo, that there's a lot of customary land also being held by Maya people that they're not farming or utilizing. They're just holding it. They're treating it like title or lease land. And they're barring everyone from entering. And that is not the premise of customary land, right? When you talk about customary land tenure, if you are not using that land, using and occupying and making a living or something from that land, you can't just hold that farmland. You can't say a young person needs that land, therefore I need to go into private land and get that private land. Your traditional system is broken. And not broken just, I can't blame the Maya people because we've had this whole history of our being a colonized country, right? And in that whole system, we never recognize the practices of Maya people. And that is the fundamental thing that this consent order is trying to achieve, right? But at the same time, their own Maya systems are broken. And so if you're going to talk about a solution, you have to recognize where that system is broken, and you can't just blame the title and lease land holding system that it's broken. You have to look at the totality of the different tenures in Toledo and how that is broken. So for example, Mose, if I live in Dolores, or let's take a less complicated village. Let's take Aguacate. If I live in Aguacate and I move to Belmopan with my family and I had customary land, I'm no longer a member of that village. Therefore, my land is no longer mine. It reverts back to the community to decide who is going to use and occupy that land. But what is happening is that people leave, right? And then people come back and say, well, I come back and I need my land, or even go on other people's land. In fact, that happened a lot during COVID, where people were affected by COVID, had to move from San Pedro and came back to Toledo, and there were conflicts in the villages because they said, well, the land when Mose had them in my for my pa, and we're like, yes, but I don't give that to Martin. Martin is using and occupying that land, right? So I think what is important is that we fully understand all the intricacies of land tenure in Toledo district. It's not straightforward. It's not at all, and I think Martin has been very clear about this. We are not at all interested in disenfranchising any Maya person who wants to participate, or any community who wants to participate in customary land tenure. And I think that message has to be abundantly clear, right? What we're saying is that within this system, we can't undo history, unfortunately, though people talk about this word of decolonizing, right? And decolonizing, and how do you undo a fact that we, East Indian exists here, Garifuna, Mestizo, Creole, people have land, they've had it for generations in leases or title. The solution has to be one that recognizes all those rights. And you know what? What government was doing, and I don't blame the Maya for having taken the matter to court. I really don't, because there was a lot of dialogue with government to say, look, man, you're giving away land that we're using and occupying. Right? That's what's happening. That is a fact. Right? Because within the system and Belmopan, when they looked at it and they did their search, the land looked like it was Crown land. But it wasn't Crown land. It was customary land that people were using, and government was issuing those land, and people would then have to. So somebody shows up from Belize City or somewhere and bought this piece of land, and they show up and Mr. Ack is using and occupying that land, and he just have to pick up himself and move because he don't have the resources to fight this, right? And at that point, there wasn't the conversation about customary land tenure. And so that was a drive about this whole consent order. So it is my view that that was a valid situation, and that government, because they did not respond to the cries of the people in Toledo to say, you are disenfranchising us, you are not recognizing that we exist, and this is how we exist.
So I want to thank you for that input. I wish we had more time today, but we will have to pick this up when we have part 2 of this conversation. I
will make myself to Belize City that time, so I don't have to deal with internet.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
you very much. we go to a break and come back to get final words from Martin King. Welcome back. We are past our time, so we've got to get final thoughts from in-studio guest Martin King. She is representing the Toledo private and lease landowners to present their side of the challenges that exist down on the ground in Toledo. I think it's a high priority issue. I'm glad that they asked to come here, and in fact, I feel the conversation is incomplete, so we are going to reschedule a part 2.
Sure.
Ms. King, your final thoughts before we close off.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very important that the entire country knows what's happening. As you've said, sometimes things happen or don't happen in Toledo, and we're considered this forgotten district, but by no means. We're living there, we're experiencing all of this. It's very real, and it's important to the entire country. So we want to be able to coexist where the ruling, the communal lands that have been recognized in the CCJ consent in 2015 are recognized, but that we also have land, constitutional rights to our private and leased lands. And so we want to be a part of that dialogue that sees this happen in a way that we coexist in a peaceful way and all our rights are respected. That's what we want.
All right, we're going to start out the schedule and we make it happen again.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having us.
All right. Hopefully, Ms. Alamea can make it to tongue as she promised.
She will, for sure.